there are people that wear the MAGA hat and like what the MAGA hat represents. Are you afraid about alienating them? They could be fans of the show.
Alienate yourselves. Yeah. Go and alienate. You have my blessing. No, I could give a
Bill Maher recently had dinner with Donald Trump at the White House, and it's a move that has caught a wave of backlash. And now that backlash is coming in from none other than Larry David. And Larry David is not one to mince his words or sentiment. In an essay written for the New York Times called My Dinner with Adolf, David seems to be referencing Maher's dinner with Trump.
Comedian on comedian violence over a dinner with Donald Trump. Larry David is using his pen to point out what he sees as Bill Maher's misguided meal with the president.
But before we get into the essay, it's worth mentioning that since Maher's dinner with Trump, which by the way came after years of Maher criticizing Trump and his politics, Maher has been vehemently defending his dinner, sometimes even on his own show to his own guests. But Maher maintains that he is basically a quote-unquote hero for going to that dinner. On a recent episode of TMZ's Two Angry Men podcast, Maher likened Trump to a king, saying, "We're slowly becoming just much more of a monarchy, but you don't want to talk to the king? You don't even want to talk to him? That's going to fix anything? I should be a hero for going there and doing those things and saying those things to the president. I'm not the villain here." In the time since the dinner, Maher has softened his rhetoric on Trump, instead directing his ire toward his own critics, mostly the so-called woke left.
I'm going to call it out wherever I see it. I mean, there are things that have to do with, gender and race and free speech and just ideas about, you can be healthy at any weight, and gender is always a social construct, and maybe we should give communism another try, and maybe we should get rid of capitalism and the border patrol, and let's tear down statues of Lincoln and get rid of the police. Just, no. It's not that I've gotten old, it's that your ideas are stupid.
But to defend his dinner, Maher insisted that he was speaking truth to power directly, saying this, "Do I have great hopes that saying anything to him is going to change anything? No, but you have to try." Again, as opposed to what? Not engaging? The Democrats, you lost everything. You have no power. You have nothing. He insists that Trump is not the quote-unquote crazy person he appears to be in public. Maher also handed the president a list of public insults that Trump had previously lobbed at Maher and had him autograph it. How fun. But while leftist and Democratic criticism of Maher's dinner is somewhat expected and predictable, he's also getting it from less Trumpy Republicans like former GOP Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, who wrote this on X. "Oh, Bill Maher, you think much too highly of yourself to think anyone would hate you for having dinner with Trump. But you do sound super naive. So Trump, the man who lies as he breathes, the man who tried to overthrow an American election, the man who purposely spreads cruelty and division to win, the man who is throwing innocent people in an El Salvador prison, the man who is siding with Putin, the man who is expelling people because of their beliefs, the man who thinks he's a dictator, the man who is ordering the Justice Department to go after his political enemies, the man who is trying to tear down our democracy and the rule of law. That man was sort of gracious and measured in private? Really, Bill? Screw that. With everything Trump is doing publicly to this country I love, I don't give a damn what he's like in private. Shame on you, Bill. All you did was normalize him. Maybe that's good for your ratings, but it's bad for the country." And amongst his critics now is Larry David. In his short essay for the New York Times, David wrote of a fictional dinner set in 1939 when he was invited to dine with Adolf Hitler. His diction in the piece is obviously reflective of the way that Maher has spoken of his own dinner with Trump, from emphasizing his own track record as a Trump critic, to disavowing hate based on how unproductive and non-constructive it is, to conceding that the dinner in the grand scheme probably meant very little, but he was brave to have gone it all. Here's this from the piece. "I had been a vocal critic of his on the radio from the beginning, pretty much predicting everything he was going to do on the road to dictatorship. No one I knew encouraged me to go. He's Hitler. He's a monster. But eventually, I concluded that hate gets us nowhere. I knew I couldn't change his views, but we need to talk to the other side, even if it has invaded and annexed other countries and committed unspeakable crimes against humanity. David even referenced Maher's statement about making Trump laugh, writing, "I joked that I was surprised to see him in a tan suit because if he wore that out, it would be perceived as un-Führer-like. That amused him to no end, and I realized I'd never seen him laugh before. Suddenly, he seemed so human. Here I was, prepared to meet Hitler, the one I'd seen and heard, the public Hitler. But this private Hitler was a completely different animal, and oddly enough, this one seemed more authentic, like this was the real Hitler. The whole thing had my head spinning." David also wrote about how, despite appearances, he and Hitler were not all that different. "I said it must be easy for a dictator to go through a breakup. He said, you'd be surprised. There are still feelings." There are still feelings. That really resonated with me. We're not that different after all. I thought that if only the world could see this side of him, people might have a completely different opinion. By the end of the fake dinner, David left the Führer, giving him a farewell Nazi salute. So yeah, I'm a fan of Larry David's. I thought Seinfeld was funny. I don't like Jerry Seinfeld himself, either as a person or as a comedian, actor, whatever, but the show was good, especially for the time. I watch a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I think Larry David is fun on a talk show. It's not much deeper than that. I don't have strong opinions on Bill Maher. I think every once in a while he says things I agree with. Other times I think he is way off base, like right now, and that's fine. I mean, you're not meant to agree with everything that these people say on television 100% of the time. I'm going to say some things in this video that you probably won't agree with sometimes, and that's fine. Some of the other hosts on this network say things I don't always agree with, but that's why there are so many of us. What is the point of listening to other people if you just want to hear what's already in your head? You listen to hear things that you may not have considered. If you like it, you take it, you keep it. If you don't like it, you leave it. The issue arises when people become so dogmatic and sycophantic about these comedians and presenters and influencers to the point that everything they say is either good or bad. And when that happens, everything these people says becomes augmented in terms of importance and significance because the public places such high value on the things that they say. Just the fact that we have people today who are identified as being influencers is ridiculous. Not just because we have people out here calling themselves influencers, but also because the public recognizes and accepts them as such. They're saying, I consciously allow this person who I don't know, who doesn't know me, to influence me, my thoughts, my feelings, my political beliefs, my religious beliefs, my spending habits, etc., more than the average person. Joe Walsh saying that Bill Maher's dinner with Trump is good for ratings but bad for the country is indicative of exactly this. And to that point, Bill Maher has been around for a very long time. At times, he has been more right-leaning, and at other times, he's been more left-leaning, and his audience has adjusted throughout the years, throughout the decades, really, accordingly. At the end of the day, Bill Maher has managed to stay on television for that long. He's managed to maintain his public and political relevance. He's running a business, and I can't say for certain whether or not he believes 100% of the things that he's saying at any given moment, or if he's just saying them because he thinks that they'll be good for ratings. But the fact that I can't say that 100% for certain, the fact that no one but Bill Maher can, tells me that I should not take the things he says as gospel. Even if I could say for sure that he believes everything he says, it doesn't mean that I have to accept his stance on things. Just because you buy a book and read it and have it on your bookshelf doesn't mean that you agree with everything or even anything that is in that book. I think what's most disappointing about Maher's dinner with Trump and his tonal shift following the dinner is how badly he got duped by some charisma and charm. This is a man who has clearly never experienced love bombing or anything of the sort. He's never learned how to recognize narcissism and self-serving behavior when it is so blatantly in front of him. Maybe that's because Maher is himself a little narcissistic, or maybe Maher is just used to engaging with other narcissistic types, that he's been normalized to all of that type of behavior. Either way, the conclusions that Maher drew from one dinner, that Trump was basically a good guy who was publicly misunderstood, were entirely lacking in substance. Any idiot can pretend to be a nice and polite person, especially when it's in their best interest to do so. But polite people are not necessarily nice or good people. And for Trump's politeness and private to one man, to Trump, no pun intended, everything he not only says but does in public and to the public is nonsense. So ultimately, who cares what Bill Maher has to say about what Trump is like in private towards Bill Maher? It doesn't matter. What matters are the things that he does during his time as president, and those don't get erased or negated just because he's cordial at dinner. If anything, one could argue that his apparent lack of guilt or regret over the things he's inflicted on millions of people around the world is more concerning than anything, but that's another conversation. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.